gonna see who's gonna touch point here. So now Falcons is just trying to live. So the D.Va slowly touched. You'll see here Dollar is touching. When D.Va touches, they get Alex gets hacked, and Dollar's just actually, believe it or not, he's just trying to farm rally. And while the D.Va touched and Dollar's touching, Grathan actually went high ground. So what ends up happening is the whole enemy team looks at these two, and they don't actually look at the Ashe, and then the Ashe just pops off, and that's sort of what's happening. Alright, so today I'm gonna talk a little bit about Ball Tracer Ebb and Flow. I'm gonna keep it pretty short, as not as long as my other videos. Also, if you hear my fire alarm going off, I'm sorry. It's low battery. I've tried everything. Dang thing won't shut up. It's really annoying. Ball Tracer Ebb and Flow. And this doesn't necessarily have to be just Ball Tracer. You can sort of run this with Winston too. It's just sort of just a concept. So first, if you don't know what Ebb and Flow is, I highly suggest checking out my Ebb and Flow video. It should be in one of the playlists, probably Team Basics. But if you don't know what ebb and flow is, essentially the very simple way of describing it, and when you get examples later, it'll definitely make sense, is if an enemy team pushes in with something, like let's say they look for a Mei wall on enemy team looks for Mei wall on your team on your Ryan, and your Ryan then tries to live the Mei wall and kites back, and then after that, then your team looks for a Mei wall on their Ryan, and then you push forward. Another example is simply, let's say the enemy team beats in and they're a little far away, so your team like speeds out and lives, like the enemy team wastes the beat sort of, or takes space off. That's it. They don't get any kills. And then when they're close to you and they're closing in, and then you beat and then you push into them, and then your beat gets more value and you get a kill. So sort of this concept of like push and pull is a very simple way I like to call it, but it's known as ebb and flow. So now, how does Ball Tracer sort of go into this? There's two things that are like really important. Is the fact that Ball Tracer comp, so there are non-mobile heroes and there are mobile heroes. And then on top of that, the other thing that's really important is there is no speed. I'll get into both these reasons in a second. So scoot, I don't want to mess with my photo. Let's see, I think it's fine, right? Yeah, cool. Alright, so now going into a bit further. So with non-mobile, why it's important to understand this, and I think I'll probably draw this out. I think it'll be easier. Coming back to this timestamp. 1249. Okay. Let's sort of go over where there's perfect. All right. So we have I'm on Epic Pen. There we go. So very simply, a way to sort of look at this is whenever there is non-mobile people and mobile people, you can see a lot of sort of like split focus and angle stuff going on. So let's pretend black, well, I'll use black, let's say pink's backline's over here. Backline, and we've hopefully seen like the basic backline video, you know, who's backliners, seen basic other videos. And let's say this team's backline's over here. Say BK. Now, what gets interesting, and we'll say there's a ball, so that spot, we'll say he's over here. Ball push tracer here, and let's say these guys are over here. Ball push tracer. So let's say the enemy team, pink team, decides to these guys go really hard and they look for mines. When this happens, the yellow team will look to sort of kite and back up, but when they do that, these guys here, what they'll do is they'll look to hit the back line. Why? Is because if they don't hit the back line, what ends up happening is both the enemy backline plus the front line will push yellow's backline, and then yellow's backline will sort of be like not doing that great. So when these guys hit the backline, the Ball Tracer will then have to make a decision of, oh, do we peel? Do we like, you know, help? Do we keep going into enemy backline? And normally you can't really peel as Ball Tracer, so you'll just keep going. But the concept of why this is important is because this splits focus. So if you sort of were to number this, this would be like the first thing that happens. So you get hit. And when the backline gets hit, then your Ball Tracer will be like, okay, well, we don't really want to peel because it's not necessarily good. Instead, we're just going to deny the people back here. So they would essentially take a 2v, let's say there's 4 people, like a D.Va, Ashe, Brig, Zen, 2v4. And their goal here is to live. And the enemy team would take a 2v4. And essentially this is where, well, let's do it this way. It'll be a 4v2 for you. So now what ends up happening is if your backline is able to back up for a second, they can maybe punish the ball tracer. If they can, great. Then you punish the ball tracer, you're up one. As long as your backline lives. If you punish something on top of it, that's like a present. That's awesome. It's bonus. But the first thing is peeling and living. And when your ball tracer goes in on this 2v4, their job is not to kill anybody. If they kill, again, that's a massive present. But their actual job here is just to live and stall these guys to make it so your backline can live their enemy ball hit. And once enemy team ball hit lives, then they'll push back in. And don't worry, we'll see like an example that sort of shows this, and it'll be a lot clearer. The other thing that's really important to understand is this concept of distance. So before, when you played Brawl, it's like, let's say in Goats, the enemy team like is sort of far away from you, and let's say you sort of just use this. So like in Goats, let's say there's a team over here and there's a team over here, and the distance between them is this. If green team starts walking in and rallies over here and starts speeding in, because of the distance is so much here, by the time green team starts rallying in, yellow team can sort of kite back. And then what they can do is wait for the green team to get really close, maybe something like right over here. And when they're really close, they'll stop maybe over here. And then they'll push back in. And now this distance is smaller. So now when they rally back in, they'll be actually able to hit green team and sort of like get on their maybe non-mobile squishies and sort of kill them instantly. Now what's interesting is that in this composition, there is no speed. So how this will get affected is when a backline pushes in, and if they go too far, they sort of chase the enemy team, which is why I always say play point, kill point, or don't like go out of your backline's LOS. Then the enemy team, so let's say yellow goes first with rally, they rally in. Then blue's like they kite, so here, let me just draw this again. So yellow's over here, they push to like right over here, let's say. They rally in. And blue is sort of like over here, and they sort of kite back, and they play over here now. And then this is sort of like the one. This is one. This is one. Then blue pushes back in, and because it's a shorter distance here now, with this 2 here, with them rallying out on 2, because it's a shorter distance, they can now just rally out and kill that brig, and the brig's out of rally, and brig's just stuck in the open space, so brig could die. So it's really interesting, and we'll sort of see this example of distance and sort of how some teams, are really smart. They don't overextend, but they still hold space. So first, let's look at the example of if you don't have point control, and you're looking to try and attack. And very simply, when you don't have point control, you need to understand that when your backline is being pressured, your job, because you have to take space, is to your front line's job is to pressure the enemy's back line. It's one playstyle. I mean, yes, you can peel, it's another playstyle, or force point is another playstyle, but in general, pressure the enemy team's backline is ball tracer. Inherently, to peel your backline, then your backline can walk forward after. So let's sort of watch this video here. 2, 9. Okay. So this is a really, really good ebb and flow fight. I was coaching the team here, and I just loved the comms that they did. It was awesome. So blue team is going in. You can sort of see ults. Blue team has a lot of ultimates. Red team doesn't have that many. So they go in. They catch this Ashe off guard on red. They end up killing the Ashe. He was too far up. And now they start walking forward. So you'll see the ball goes in, mines, create space. Because of this, blue team can now sort of walk more. So they walk up. Immediately when the blue team, flankers are sort of in, the enemy ball goes to hit their backline. And as soon as when this happens, you'll see now that all of blue will now peel and try and like live against this ball. And these guys are still trying to hit because they have EMP. So now blue team's front line hits and the EMP, you'll notice the whole backline is peeling and living against that ball. Unfortunately, the Sombra dies here because he sort of EMP'd in front of the DPS, trying to do behind or whatnot. Then on top of this, again, backline's still living. His ball, balls there, tracers there, just trying to live. They're just trying to live. While that's happening, you're noticing like ball is just trying to distract these 3 people. So it's right now a 3v2. It was a 3v3 here. They down one, but 3v2 here. And now they keep pressuring ball. They keep pressuring ball. Ball's really low. He gets flailed. And he sort of gets caught out. And he dies. So they punish. Now they're even. Now they have trance, and they're like, we can still win, we can still win. So let's trance and keep go aggro. So they push in aggressive with trance. They catch the tracer out. They push in, they push in, but they push in, they push in. They pressure Diva. Bash happens. Diva's low. Note where the brig is. The brig is really aggressive here. Now red team now uses bomb, and now blue team's like, we gotta kite, we gotta live, we gotta live, we gotta live, we gotta live. So they kite. Now blue team's like, I want to push back in, I want to push back in. And here they sort of mess up. They use 2 ults instead of 1, but I think Diva was sort of in a situation where they sort of needed a bomb. It's fine. So they rally, and so is Brig is out of position. Ball manages to boop off the enemy Brig, but now they rally and bomb, and then they're sort of playing point here. And red has to keep going to point because of the countdown. They rally, they bomb, they keep going aggro, they keep going aggro. But what's interesting to note here is you'll notice the start of the fight, these people didn't have ultimates because the fight's so long. They're building ults. So now they're pushing with rally, they're going really aggro. Sombra gets caught out and dies. Keep going aggro, keep going aggro. Now the enemy team red trances, and now they push in with trance, and they go really aggressive. Immediately blue's like, no, we gotta live, live. So now blue team backs up and lives, and when you kite out, sometimes people overextend, and you can bait people like this, and that's what happens, unfortunately, to Mr. Mustard Man. He gets caught out and dies, and again, while this is happening, while they're kiting out, you'll see Ball over here pressure these guys, the red team's backline. So these guys aren't actually pressuring yellow right now. Now red team's rally comes in, and they're like, we need to win, we need to win, we need to win, push, push, push. Now blue's like, okay, well, we got a few kills, but like we still need to live, play distance, play distance, play distance. And Bob happens, and they're like, okay, just live, just live, just live. So notice again, look at the distance they're playing really far away. And now blue will even be like, okay, the ball comes in. And one thing to note, right, is they have a Sombra. So maybe when they're kiting and living, the enemy ball hits and Sombra gets a hack on the ball, or Tracer comes in, and Sombra gets a hack on the Tracer, and that can be like a trigger to go back forward. So now ball goes in, right over here. He mines. Blue's like, you know what, we can still go, our ball's low, like I have trance, let's push. Push in with trance, they go really hard. Diva goes hard on the Zen, which is a good kill, and they just go really aggressive here, and then they end up winning because red doesn't have any ultimates. And they end up winning that fight. And that was like a really long fight. And this is like a really good example of sort of ebb and flow and how they kept pushing and pulling. And they didn't overextend, because if they went too far, then they'd go out of their Brig Zen's LOS, and the enemy team backline just might punish them. So, and their Blues backline was peeling really well, so they wouldn't die. Okay, so this is an example of, if you don't have point control, sort of how to have your ball tracer sort of pressure their backline, and your backline how to peel and live, and then sort of play around ultimates. And again, it could be a little bit higher level, like, Shamra could be looking for hacks when the ball comes in. There could be a little bit better, like, maybe point focus, or DF touching point to essentially force point. But in general, this was like really smooth. Okay, now let's look at a pro example from Falcons Esports. So in this example, Falcons has point control. So when you have point control, you don't obviously have to worry that much. But what matters the most is the fact that the enemy team doesn't cap. And what normally is the biggest issue is if the enemy ball tracer hits your backline, then your backline normally has to like back up, and they have to sort of like, they'll back up and they'll try and live. And this isn't talked about in the backline bod. But when this happens, when they're trying to take this 4v2 or 3, whatever, how many flankers they have, in this situation it's 3, it's winnable, but it takes time. So while that's happening, the rest of Falcons, the ball player, and in this case they only have a ball player, Diva might try to touch point, Sombra might touch point, there's no tracer. So they need to try and stall point to buy time, because if they go on the enemy backline and they die, that's a problem. They can still go on the enemy backline and stall point at the same time, but if they die, then the enemy team here, Rebrand in Progress, would just cap. Or it becomes a lot more difficult. So if Los just dies, then it becomes a lot more difficult for Falcon Esports, because now who's going to touch point? It has to be maybe the Diva, or it has to be the Sombra to buy time. So let's sort of watch this. So you can sort of see Falcon Esports is playing, like, again, a slower composition. They have Sombra Ash, which is a really slow comp, but they build EMP and they can punish people. There's a Sticky that comes in, unfortunately doesn't get anything, and Los just goes off the map. So right off the bat, they're down their ball. So now Falcons, who has point control, isn't able to really contest point or hit the enemy backline. So the enemy backline on this team is like much stronger because they have no balls. They could be more aggressive. So now notice, like, Falcons sort of letting this tick. They're sort of playing slow. The enemy team is ball tracer, sort of forcing points. They didn't really forcing point that well because it didn't do it right here. And now you notice here that Falcons actually drops down low for a little bit so that whoever goes on point, they can help support him. So EMP happens, and notice they push out, they catch somebody, and they go out, and unfortunately, what ends up happening is Disclosure ends up killing Seiko. Now, they use EMP, it's not enough, so they don't want Brig to die, so they've Trance to keep Brig alive. Brig is holding a lot of space here, probably hits a Flail, which, procs Inspire, which is really good. Brig immediately bashes out. Then now you're seeing Rebound in Progress push back in with the Diva Bomb, and now here you'll see Falcons try and live from that Diva Bomb. X-Wrath gets a kill. And again, you can sort of see they're forcing point, but someone has to touch point. And then unfortunately, Lulcious here gets flailed off the map. Lulcious is a very good main tank. This is just unlucky, okay? He's a really, really good main tank. So now again, who's going to touch point? Who's going to touch point? It's going to be really rough. So you'll see Regain Progress, they're sort of inting here in the sense. Task died here. Remember how I said if you're forcing point, and you don't need to do more. The enemy team already has to come to you. Don't die, just live. The Task trades here, which is really bad. And now Pure Irish loses mech. And they trance, and they keep going. And I'm curious when that trance was. Did they have trance? He could have tranced earlier. He could have Disclosure should have tranced earlier to save mech, right? So he trances late. And then again, so now you're gonna see who's gonna touch point here. So now Falcons is just trying to live. So the Diva slowly touched. You'll see here Dollar is touching. When Diva touches, they get Alex gets hacked. And Dollar's just actually, believe it or not, he's just trying to farm rally. And while the Diva touched and Dollar's touching, Grathan actually went high ground. So what ends up happening is the whole enemy team looks at these two, and they don't actually look at the Ashe, and then the Ashe just pops off. And that's sort of what's happening. The Ashe and Zen are just popping off because the enemy team's looking at the Brig Diva. And then rally happens, and then he builds rally, and he sort of wins with that. So they sort of use the concept of split focus here to win this fight, where they, obviously stalled point with, the ball for a little bit. He got booped off. Then Diva touched. Diva would come off. Then Diva went on again. Last fight there, the Diva came, and then Brig came. And as soon as that happened, Grathan went high ground, took a high ground position, and went really aggressive with dynamites and headshots because he's mechanically insane. And Exarath played the Mega and just shot too. And the enemy team wasn't able to deal with both of those. And then Dollar had rally, which obviously cleaned things up. So you can sort of see again the push and pull with sort of how the Diva Bomb happened, the trance it started off actually with EMP. Then there was a trance by Falcons. Then I think Rebound in Progress used Diva Bomb, and they used their own trance. So there was a constant push and pull happening. But in the end, Falcons ended up winning because they were cycling their ults a little bit better, and they managed to sort of use split focus to win as well. Okay. I'm not going to go too much into other stuff. I think this is sort of basic enough, and hopefully paints the picture well. A few other basic stuff for ultimates is that if you're going into a fight and you have 5 ults and the enemy team barely has any, something to understand is you need to finish that fight fast. If you don't, then if you don't knock that enemy team out and cap, well, you're going to start using ultimates, especially if you're using them in a row, 3 or 4. If you use one at a time, it's a little different. But if you just stack them, then the enemy team's going to build ultimates, and they're going to push back in with ultimates. And in 2 CP situations where these guys who have started with no ults have spawn advantage, and then they build ultimates, you can easily lose. So the very simple way, if you use all your ultimates and you don't kill them, then they're going to build their ults and kill you. Now, if you're in the opposite situation and you're sort of the ones on defense and you have no ults, and you're sort of trying to understand how to approach a team that has 5 to 6 ultimates, well, if you have spawn advantage, try and obviously use that to your thing, but very simply, either look to go hyper aggro first, and try and trade backlines. It's a very simple concept. Just go really aggressive, try and trade backlines because you have spawn advantage, and if you sort of kill their backline, then they have low heals, and you can hopefully win. Or you play really slow, stall point. Your DPS are spamming, building ults, and living against their ultimates, and then hopefully you live through 5, 6 ults, and you build your own, and then you push with those. That's really, really, really hard because a lot of mistakes can happen when you do that. Something else that hopefully most of you guys know is rally is better than trance, because in a general sense in fighting, because rally allows your Zen to still discord and do damage as well as heal, and rally armor is also just broken, plus your Brig's doing damage, whereas if you're trancing, Zen's not doing damage, discord can't move, and heal orb can't move, so it's not as strong. Also, armor's again sort of broken. And when you're looking at ebb and flow mid fights, Diva Bomb is insanely strong. As you sort of saw, I think one of them used Diva Bomb here, and it sort of like made everyone kite, live, and like stabilize. It's really, really strong because people normally don't have CDs to actually live Diva Bombs. And there's some other last notes really simply is like keep in mind, you know, if you're a Diva player or you're Brig Zen or playing Mercy, just keep in mind how much you have to peel based off the composition you have and the composition they have. And we talked about it earlier, but hacks help a lot with the ebb and flow. You can get triggers off hacks and help you push back in. And if you're playing Echo, Echo can also be, you know, Echo can peel and Echo can also be aggressive. So Echo can sort of dive in with your ball tracer, or Echo can also maybe peel. So if the enemy ball tracer hits your backline, your Echo can just sticky the ball and beam the ball and kill the ball. Okay. Hopefully that helped. And sorry again about the fire alarm. Well, smoke detector actually. But thank you.